What is up, fellow Hoops fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of The Last Shot NBA show here on Little Birdie TV. And as always, we are brought to you by our good friends over there at topsport.com.au. Guys, I've got a smile on my face today because we've got a very special guest. I've been trying to get this guy on since the beginning of the NBA season, but he is an extremely busy man. Doesn't have time for us little guys, but he did make time today. He's a freelance writer. He's the producer and host of the Raptors show up there in Toronto. He's a New York Times best-selling author. We'll have to fact check that because I'm not entirely sure that one's true, but he is an author. He's got a book called Cover Story that is out right now. Mr. Alex Wong, how are you, sir?
Nick, I can't believe I'm finally on. It's been a season-long chase between you and me to get me on the show. And, I thought I was just playing a practical joke on you by saying no every single time you asked. And I guess the joke has to end today. I'm right here. I'm ready to talk to you about basketball.
Yeah, you kept saying no, but I didn't think you counted on my persistence, man, because I really wanted you on this show. You've been a good friend of mine. We've worked together, obviously, in the States as well for many years. We always have a few laughs. So I've been wanting to get you...
Nick, define work, though. Yeah. What do you mean we've worked together? Yeah.
We used to turn up to games together.
Okay, I think I'm losing my NBA credential as we speak. So this is the worst decision of my career, but I appreciate it, Nick, for having me on.
Can you just let the audience know a little bit about what we actually did at NBA games that we've been laughing about for many years?
Right. So please to your producer if he could edit this out when this goes up on YouTube. But unfortunately, I guess we're live. So Nick and I, we met in New York. We were both NBA writers, credential reporters, and we used to go to New York Knicks, Brooklyn Nets games. And, we connected on Media Row because during games, there's just a lot of downtime. Before the game, we would go try to interview players in the locker room. Nick was always there trying to talk to the Australian players after the games and things of that nature. But during the game, a lot of times Nick and I would just not goof around, but kind of make jokes. And eventually we came up with this term called "you too can be a sports writer." So every time we did something that wasn't very traditional sports writer ish, we would look at each other. Like if Nick got a courtside photo, before the game, or if we were taking pictures of our sneakers on Media Row, we would look at each other and say, "You too can be a sports writer. We are the inspiration for the next generation." So it was just all making light of kind of the work that we did, because I'm sure you'll agree, Nick, there's just a lot of waiting and sitting around at our jobs, especially when we used to be at the arenas all the time.
Absolutely. And that's what most people, don't realize. Like we used to get to an arena, a couple hours before a game, and then obviously leave a couple hours after a game. So it's basically like a full day work shift. You're doing like basically 5 p.m. in the afternoon to maybe midnight, depending on how much work you have to do. So you do have to fill in the downtime. We do like to have a few jokes and make light of the situation as well. So it was definitely fun. I do miss doing that with you, and hopefully we get to do it again very soon. Alex, listen, we know you're a busy man, so we're going to jump straight into it now. We are going to talk all things Toronto Raptors today, but I do want to touch on a couple of trades that happened this morning, Australian time. It would have been afternoon for you over there in Toronto. The first trade I want to talk about really quickly is Portland and New Orleans have agreed to a trade. CJ McCollum, Larry Nance, Tony Snell. I didn't even realize Tony Snell was still in the league, Alex, but he's being shipped to New Orleans. And Portland get Josh Hart, Alexander Walker, Satoransky, Didi Luzada, and draft pick there. What are your thoughts on this trade, Alex?
First of all, that was another favorite of hanging around with Nick at the arena, was me and him during pregame warmups looking at players saying, he's still in the league? Or who is that? So anyways, in terms of this trade, we saw what Portland did last week when they traded Norman Powell and Robert Covington to the Clippers. I think it signaled that they are trying to rebuild the roster around Damian Lillard. Now, my biggest question is, Dame is 32, and while the Blazers are recouping younger players and draft picks, how much time is Dame going to give the Blazers to actually retool the roster? Because this is a full teardown, and I would expect their center, Yusuf Nurkic, to be traded before the trade deadline this week as well. Is Dame really going to sit around and wait till he turns 34, 35 for this Blazers team to potentially be back in contention in the West? I'm not sure. So, longer term, I don't know what Portland's plan is. I've always said they should go ahead and trade Dame, and not wait for him to actually request a trade, because the longer you wait, I think it's going to be a tougher situation for them to get what they want for Dame. In terms of the Pelicans, we know the situation with Zion Williamson. He hasn't played this season. I think CJ McCollum is a good pickup for them. While I like the potential of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a fellow Canadian, and Josh Hart, I don't think they paid too big of a price to get CJ McCollum. So, for Pelicans fans, I think this is exciting for them. If you look at Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ, now, is that team going to potentially compete for a championship or even a top 4 spot in the West sometime in the future? I'm not sure, but I think right now the Pelicans are trying to get themselves a play-in spot and show Zion that they're committed to winning. So it makes sense for New Orleans to me. I got a lot of questions about what Portland's long-term plans are.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Pelicans started, I think it was 1-12, and the fact that they're in, play-in contention right now is absolutely great, and I think this is a great deal for them. As far as Portland, they said we're trying to build this roster around Dame. You've had like 10 years of Dame to build a roster around him. So these moves that they've been making do not suggest that they're building around Dame, like you said, right now. Like it doesn't not make any sense to me. I do think Dame leaves, whether it's this offseason or what. I think he's gone. I don't think he'll be there at the start of next season.
Yeah, if I were to bet, I would probably bet on that too. And my thing is that I don't think, even though the Blazers feel like there's a connection between Dame and the city of Portland and the fan base, you don't want to leave it to the player. You don't want to wait until he demands a trade and then you lose some of that leverage. Because think about, everybody's been talking about, where Ben Simmons is going to go. And there's been a lot of rumors linking him to potentially in a trade with Brooklyn and James Harden. Imagine if Dame Lillard was available this week, and imagine what kind of assets the Blazers would be able to get back in terms of legitimate players and draft picks, or even Ben Simmons himself, if they were willing to engage with Philadelphia on a deal. I just think Portland should just go ahead and do this rebuild and not leave themselves without, a good return for Dame, because they are very far away from contention right now.
Very far. I've been saying it all season. I'm going to keep saying it because I just don't know what the hell the Portland Trail Blazers are doing. One more trade we're going to touch on before we get into some Raptor stuff. Now, this is the one that's gotten people really talking because it does involve the Sacramento Kings, and the Kings are known for just being the Kings, and they've done Kings things yet again today. So the Pacers are trading Domas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb. That second Jeremy Lamb is actually meant to be Justin Holiday. Woj made a mistake. They're trading them to Sacramento for Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, Tristan Thompson. On the surface, Alex, this is not a bad trade in the sense of the Kings are getting back a pretty good damn player in Sabonis, who's a 2-time All-Star, career averages of just under 20 points per game. He's only 25. Like, he is a stud. But then you look at what they gave up in Tyrese Halliburton, who everyone believes he's going to be an absolute superstar in the NBA. On his part, like, I reckon I'd be glad to be out of Sacramento, but, going to Indiana is not exactly like a huge reward for that. But who do you reckon won this trade? Just, very early take on this one.
You know what? I would say the Pacers, and I think we should give Sacramento a harder time. You mentioned earlier you don't know what the hell the Portland front office is doing. I don't know what the hell they've been doing for the past 20 years, if we're being honest. And I was watching ESPN earlier today, and Malika Andrews says she talked to somebody in the Sacramento Kings organization after the trade was made, and that person said, what the hell is going on? So if you have someone in the organization saying that, I think it says everything you need to know about that organization. Domantas Sabonis, I love him as a player. But why are you giving up 21-year-old Tyrese Halliburton, who is playing great, looks like a franchise cornerstone, and is legitimately, if you go through the last 10, 15 years of Sacramento's draft record, probably one of two or three guys that you can truly say that they made a really good pick on.
Hmm.
So I have no idea what the Sacramento Kings are doing. You get Domantas Sabonis back, but now what? This gets you no closer to contending in the West, and now you've given up the best young player on your roster. So honestly, I feel like the Kings aren't going to make the playoffs for the next 2 decades, and I challenge them to prove me wrong.
I challenge them to prove you. I love that they're not going to prove you wrong. They're an absolutely joke of a franchise. Like I said, on the surface, it doesn't look too bad, but this kind of move is like if Sacramento was in win now mode, it might help them, but they're not. So yeah, giving up like a guy like Halliburton. I always thought, I mean, most of the NBA world thought, I guess, De'Aaron Fox was going to be gone. And just to wake up on my behalf, wake up and see Halliburton was gone. It was a shock to the system, let me tell you. But like I said, the Kings are going to Kings. They're not going to make the playoffs for a very long time. I'm a Knicks fan, so I know what kind of misery they're experiencing right now. Alex, let's move on to the Toronto Raptors, a team that I know, obviously you're a Toronto you live in Toronto, you cover this team nightly, you know the team very well. Had a good win yesterday. They beat the Hornets 116-101. It was another character building win for the Toronto Raptors, wasn't it, Alex?
Yeah, they're playing their best basketball of the season right now. So they're on a 6-game win streak now, and the team is finally healthy and full. I think last night was just the 15th time this season that they had the top 8 players in their rotation all in the lineup. And right now, the success for the Raptors is predicated on that starting lineup. When you talk about Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam leading the way, but also rookie Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, and Gary Trent Jr., who are all playing at a really high level. So it's interesting because their general manager, Bobby Webster, did a press conference today to talk about the trade deadline. And obviously, as you know, Nick, with these things, these general managers will never say anything in the days leading up to the deadline. But I think there is a lot of optimism about what they're going to be able to do between now and Thursday. They've got Goran Dragic's contract, and they're willing to attach draft picks to see what they can get. So it's an exciting time in Toronto. I think a lot of people, including myself, thought this was going to be a bit of a transition year, a rebuilding year. You look at the standings now, and you look at the mess that is the Brooklyn Nets. The Raptors are ahead of the Nets in the standings right now, and they're in the top 6. And I think they've got a really good chance to finish in the top 4 in the East, as crazy as that sounds.
Who's impressed you the most this season from the Raptors? Because, I mean, they've had periods earlier in the year where they looked a little bit average, but then they have these stretches where they look fantastic. They look like they're finally figuring it out now. And like you said, a lot of that is to do with health. And obviously they had guys in and out of the COVID protocols, as most teams did in the earlier part of the season. But who's really impressed you the most? Because Siakam's been playing well. Scotty Barnes, OG, the teams, they're a fun team to watch. I've actually watched them quite a few times this season.
Wow, Nick Metallinos has been watching basketball. Breaking news across the scroll here at the bottom. No, so I'm going to cheat a little and give 2 picks, okay? Because it's too hard for me to just pick one. For me, 1A would be Pascal Siakam's return from injury and returning to his all-star and all-NBA form. If you look at Pascal Siakam's numbers in the past 2 months, he has been playing at a level that would put him up there with like the top 5, top 10, top 15 players in the league. And it's been really impressive on both ends of the floor. He was just named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Every night now, he is flirting with a triple-double. He is playing all defensive team caliber defense, and the Raptors go as he goes. But number 2, or I guess 1B for me, would be Scotty Barnes, because there was a lot of questions coming in to draft night. I think most people had Jalen Suggs pegged as the number 4 pick going to Toronto, and the Raptors surprised a lot of people by taking Scotty. And the scouting report on him was, this guy can't shoot. He's going to be a long-term project on offense, but he's going to be really good on the defensive end. Well, guess what? He's come into this first season, and the jumper and the overall offensive game has been way ahead of schedule. He is putting up 20 points and 10 rebounds almost every other night. He is impacting winning, which I think is always impressive for rookie players. He's playing 36 minutes a night. I know Evan Mobley is getting most of the attention right now when it comes to the Rookie of the Year race, and deservedly so. But don't sleep on Scotty. For me, it's Pascal's All NBA play and Scotty's rookie season that is fueling this run right now for Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Pascal's actually putting up numbers that are either on par or better than his All-Star season in 2019-20, I believe it was. It was an interesting stat from yesterday's game that I want to talk about real quick. This was the fourth time this season where the Raptors have had 4 20-point scorers. This had never happened more than twice in a single season prior to this season. That was from yesterday. So they're getting a really nice, balanced production from their guys this season, aren't they?
They definitely are. And, shouts to your producer, because I know Nick Metallinos, you're not pulling up these stats. But no, it's I think that number really does explain the Raptors' success, is that when you put that starting 5 out there, people know now about Fred VanVleet because he just made his first All-Star team. People are familiar with Pascal, but Gary Trent Jr. was just coming off a streak of games where he scored 30-plus points. And OG Anunoby, who people here in Toronto know as a very quiet personality, it kind of translates onto the court because on some nights you'll look at OG and say, okay, he really hasn't done much. And then you check the box score and he's at 20 points. And, you add in Scotty as well, who I just mentioned. They have one of the best starting 5s, in my opinion, in the Eastern Conference. The biggest problem is it's a huge drop-off when you get to the bench. They've been getting slightly better play lately from Chris Boucher and Precious Achiuwa, but this is essentially a 6-7 man team right now.
Yeah.
And if you check the minutes, Fred is leading the league in minutes, and the rest of the starters are all either in the top 10 or top 20. And to me, you can't succeed like that over the course of the regular season. Now, it might work in the playoffs when you shorten the rotation. So that is why it's so critical, I think, for them to make a move at the deadline. And I think they should do something this week, because the starters have played well enough. I almost feel like the front office owes it to them to give them a reward.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Nurse has been running these short rotations. Like you said, the starters have been playing like between 35 to 40 minutes each, and then there is a drop-off. The next 2 guys might play 18 to 20 minutes. What move do you see them making? I don't think they've got any like true bigs on the team. Do you see them making a move for a big? Do they add more shooting? What do the Raptors do?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, their general manager Bobby Webster talked today, and of course in true general manager speak, he said that they're evaluating all options. So I think the most likely trade that's going to happen is they're going to package Goran Dragic's contract and attach either a first round pick or maybe 2 second-round picks and see what they can get. Names that have been mentioned include Yusuf Nurkic. I've heard Robert Williams in Boston. There's been some Miles Turner talk, although I'm not sure if the Pacers are still trading him now that they've done the Domantas Sabonis trade. So those names have been mentioned, and even former Raptor Jakob Poeltl in San Antonio. Now, I think it's just going to come down to how much the Raptors want to give up in terms of draft picks. Because when it comes down to Thursday at the 3 p.m. Eastern deadline, they're going to have a decision to make. Are you willing to give up that extra first-round pick to get that player? In terms of position, I actually don't think they need to get a center. I think Nick Nurse has been really creative, and I think guys like Scotty Barnes and OG Anunoby are able to play those center minutes. Unless you're going up against a Joel Embiid or a Nikola Jokic where you need that really traditional big. Nick doesn't even like playing those lineups because the strength of the Raptors is the fact that they have all these switchable guys that they can put on the floor. So if you were to ask me, my preference is for them to get a shooter off the bench or even a backup point guard. But when I'm looking out there, there's not a lot of names. Danilo Gallinari has been mentioned. Your Knicks, Evan Fournier has been mentioned as a player.
You could have him. You could have those him for guys,
free. yeah, trust me. I know we can have him. That's why his name has been mentioned. But like, those names don't excite me, right? So I don't know what's out there, but I do think whether it's a center or a shooter, I do expect the Raptors to make a move on Thursday.
You did say that you think they could possibly get into the top 4, seeds this season. What's the ceiling for this Raptors team?
It's so interesting because the East is wide open right now. And I believe the top 8 teams are separated by like 3 games in the loss column. And the Raptors have one of the easiest schedules down the stretch. Now, that means nothing if they don't take care of business. But assuming that the starters continue to play well and assuming they get some type of reinforcements on Thursday, for me, I really think they can get into that 4-5 spot. And there's not a single team in that playoff bracket right now that I would say the Raptors don't have a chance against in round one. You know, I think Miami's a team I wouldn't want to play because when they're fully healthy, they're really scary. Brooklyn still scares me because I'm not trying to go up against Kevin Durant, James Harden, and, you know, half of Kyrie Irving in a playoff series. But if you tell me that the Raptors are going to play Cleveland in the first round, or if they're going to play Chicago in the first round, you know what? I like the Raptors in those series. And I like, the thing is, forget about the players. Some of them obviously have the championship experience. I think Nick Nurse is one of the best coaches in the league. And when you get to the playoffs, I think Nick is going to have a coaching advantage. And I think that's going to be so important in a 7-game series. So for me, I think the Raptors can get to 45 to 48 wins. And if you're talking about the most optimistic outlook, I honestly think they can win a round and potentially have a chance to go to the conference finals. But that is like the most optimistic outlook. Things have to break right and all of that stuff. But they are way ahead of schedule right now. And there's a lot of excitement in Toronto. And I think long term, that's all that matters for this season.
I'm not mad at that. One more quick question on the Raptors before we head into some game predictions. Who is disliked more in Toronto right now, Goran Dragic or Aaron Baines still?
Oh, you know what? Shouts to Aaron Baines because I know he had a really fluky accident at the Olympics, and I know he's still recovering. And I read Brian Windhorst of ESPN's story about it. You know, it's definitely Goran. It's definitely Goran. You know, the thing is, you know, Aaron Baines just did not fit with this team. Yeah. And, you know, he didn't play well last year. And you know how it is. When a team is not playing well, there's always a scapegoat. And for the Raptors fans last season, it was Aaron Baines. Now, Goran is a much different situation. So he got off on the wrong foot right away because when he was traded here in the Kyle Lowry sign-in trade, he did an interview with European media, which basically translated to him saying that he didn't want to be in Toronto because he had, quote unquote, higher ambitions. Now, I didn't really have a problem with that because Goran is in the back half of his career and Toronto is looking like a rebuilding situation. But I think the thing that happened is, so the Raptors and Goran agreed during the season because he wasn't in the rotation that they were just going to send him home and try to figure this out via trade. But Goran has been showing up to the Miami Heat practice facility. He has been showing up to Miami Heat games. And for me, that just seems a little bit disrespectful. Yeah. At the end of the day, I don't care. Like we've, you know, Nick, you and me, we've seen players throughout the years have these holdouts or leave the team. But, you know, Raptors fans are very passionate. So to answer your question, nobody in the city likes Goran Dragic.
I'm good to see my fellow Australian is off the hook on that one there. Alex, we know you're a busy man. We're going to let you go, but real quick, we always end the show with some game predictions. We're just going to take a look at some games that are on today and get your predictions on these and mine as well. And I'm usually wrong some of the time, but we're going to start off with the Phoenix Suns and the Philadelphia 76ers. 76ers favorites here, $1.91. Suns $1.96. The line is at -1. Total is at 217.5. That one's live on NBA League Pass. 76ers just 2 games behind Miami at the top. Suns have now won 2 in a row after having their 11-game streak stopped. They've still got the best record in the league. No Landry Shamet for the Suns. Shake Milton ruled out and Matisse Thybulle is questionable for today. This one should be a fun matchup, Alex. Who do you like in this one?
I'm going to take Phoenix. I know that they played against Chicago last night, so it's the second half of a back-to-back. But to me, they're the most complete team in the NBA, and I'm always going to take Phoenix. I actually, you know, it's a little off topic, but I hope the Suns win the championship this year. I think it would be a great story for Chris Paul and the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that, actually. I've said that they're probably the most complete team in the NBA. I actually said this on the show last week. I like the Phoenix Suns a lot. I think they're championship favorites right now, and rightly so. I'm going with the Suns today as well. Even though Embiid's been having this monster stretch, I do like the Suns today. Next game we're going to take a look at here is the Boston Celtics. The scorching Boston Celtics against the slumping Brooklyn Nets. Celtics $1.25 favorites. Brooklyn Nets $4.30. The line is at 9. Total is at 212.5. That one's live on ESPN. Nets are plummeting. They're plummeting. They've lost 8 in a row. Celtics have won 5 in a row and looking pretty dangerous. They could actually overtake the Nets with a win today. No Kyrie because this game is in New York. He's not allowed to play. Nick Claxton, James Harden are questionable. LaMarcus Aldridge is out. I'm actually going to go with the Celtics here. I think they've been playing some great basketball, playing great defense over this, nice stretch that they're having. I'm going with the Celtics.
Yeah, as a former gambling degenerate, lay the point spread, man. I think it's gonna be a blowout for the Celtics. James Harden, I don't think is playing. Like you mentioned, Kyrie's not allowed to play, and KD is still out. When you take those big three out of the lineup, and you look at the Brooklyn roster, they're like a 12-win team.
Yep, facts.
So like they're not a real NBA team. Like with all due respect to their role players. So for me, this feels like a no-brainer.
And please don't disrespect the Australian Prime Minister, Paddy Mills, though, because he's...
Oh, yes, that's right. Shout outs to Paddy Mills. But having said that, put your mortgage on the Boston Celtics.
Jeez, I hope they win today. We're gonna
please delete this footage immediately when the Nets win by 10 today.
Next game we're going to take a look at here is my New York Knicks and the Denver Nuggets. If ever you're going to put your mortgage on a team today, it's going to be the Denver Nuggets. Denver Nuggets, $1.24 favorites. New York Knicks, $4.40. The line's at -9.5. Total is at 219.5. Knicks have lost 3 in a row, including losing last night to the Jazz. Second night of a back-to-back for them. We suck. What more can I say? Denver, Jokic, they're playing great. Yeah, put your mortgage on the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, refinance that first mortgage that you just put on the Celtics and put that all on the Denver Nuggets. I think the real betting line is Julius Randle going to smash another laptop tonight?
Yes, put your mortgage on that one too.
Man, New York basketball is down bad right now. Brooklyn and New York. Yeah.
Easy money there on the Nuggets. Last game we're going to take a look at, then we're going to let you go, Alex, is the Milwaukee Bucks at the Los Angeles Lakers. Bucks $1.62 favorites, and rightly so. Lakers $2.40. The line's at 3.5. The total is at 234 flat. Live on ESPN today too. Milwaukee have won 3 in a row. Lakers had a win against the Knicks, but that doesn't really mean much. Giannis has been playing some great basketball. He's on a nice little streak of 19 games of 25 points or more. So I actually think he's going to make that 20. Bucks are like 22-5 when their big three plays. They're winning today because also LeBron, I think, is day-to-day, as is Anthony Davis, and Dwight Howard is questionable. So when you're talking about not a real NBA team without some of their stars, that's the Lakers as well.
Yeah, and even if healthy, I think the Bucks are a legitimate championship contender, and the Lakers are not. I think the Lakers get talked about a lot because they are the Lakers and they're in Los Angeles, but I'm sure you've watched them this year, Nick. They're just not a good team. They're not a good team. And we get force-fed them on television here in North America because every one of their games is on national TV. And I'm so tired of watching the Lakers. So, forget about breaking this down based on skill, just out of spite. I got the Bucks winning by 40 points.
I love it. Listen, I usually pick the Bucks anyway because I can't go against my fellow Greek and Giannis.
That's
so,
right.
It's a no-brainer for me. Alex, we're going to let you go. We've already kept you way too long because, like I said, we know you're a busy man. You're working on that next New York Times best-selling book. But thank you very much, man, for joining us. It was great to see you again. Hopefully I get to see you again in person real soon.
No, for sure, Nick. And I just want to say congrats to all your success with this show and everything. I'm always rooting for you. All jokes aside, Nick Metallinos, one of the best in the business. Just don't have any serious sports writer talk with him on Media Row.
We're definitely not editing this part out of the show. So
man, okay. Let me just go in the other room and hand in all my credentials. I'll mail them in to Mark Tatum right now.
This is actually going to be the new intro for the show. That soundbite. So thank you very much, Alex. This has been another episode of The Last Shot NBA show here on Little Birdie TV. As always, brought to you by our good friends at topsport.com.au. And we'll see you guys on Friday morning with old mate Benyam Kadane.